Welcome back to Airhead Barn. It is time to continue this interesting restoration project, and for this episode I plan to restore Bing carburetors. So this bike came with 32mm CV Bing carburetors. I already restored the one on the left, and now I'm going to show you the techniques that I'm using and what parts needs to be changed to sufficiently or effectively restore carb on the right side. So please join me for this interesting work. Okay, so here we are with our right hand carburetor that I'm going to restore. The serial number for this one is 64/32/14. If you look at the manual, it will tell you that it's a carburetor that goes on the right cylinder. So how to start this? First, I actually degreased it the best that I could with the brushes to take out as much crud as I can. Later, as I start removing parts from a carburetor, I'm going to give it another round of cleaning, and finally I'm going to put everything, when it's disassembled, I'll put everything in ultrasonic cleaner to give it a nice look, same as my other carburetor is looking, the one on the left side. Okay, so where to start? First, the way how I like to start is to removing top part. On these older Bings, they are actually 4 screws compared to the newer ones where you have only 2. So first we are going to remove those. Okay, after we are done with that, it should be pretty easy just to pull up the cover. Here it is. These older models don't have a spring here. And now we can just pull out the diaphragm with, just be gentle so it doesn't, if you want to save it, be gentle when prying it off so it doesn't tear. And then here is a needle. We are going to replace diaphragm and needle as well, even though this one does not look in terrible shape, but I'll give it a closer look and most likely replace it just because we are doing this complete restoration project. I'll just set it aside. And the reason why we started from the top is now actually you have a you can lay it upside down and it stays flat. Okay. So next thing, we can remove bowl, and to do that we will need to just slide this clip off, and here it is. We are going to clean everything, and now in the same time we can actually remove this clip. Okay. There it is. Okay, now we can start with the jet removals. First, idle screw mixture, we can do it. Okay, comes out with a spring. And here what I can see is that O-ring, essentially, I'm not sure. So O-ring already ripped, so it was definitely time for replacing this one. Okay. Next thing, we can remove idle jet. Is also not in the best shape. Great. Okay, now we can proceed with the main jet removal, and for that we will need 8mm wrench. There it is. Okay, so this main jet is stamped 145, and that's a common jet that was used across R75 and later successor R80, so 750cc and 800cc engines. Since we upgraded this engine with a Siebenrock power kit to 1000cc, we will need to change this main jet. And then if you look at the catalog, at that year, with 32mm CV Bing carbs, 150 jet was used for 1000cc at that time. So that's what I'm going to place here instead of 145. Okay, now we have this washer, and now there is a main jet holder that needs to be removed. Okay. And below holder there is a needle jet and diffuser that should just come out. And if they don't, just lightly press it from inside of the carb. There it is. So if it's stuck, try it with something soft. Don't jam that diffuser. Okay, here it is. Diffuser. That will need to be cleaned. And then needle jet. So this one is stamped 2.66, which is again common for R75, R80. For R100 or 1000cc engines they use 2.68, so that's what we are going to put here instead of this one. Alright. Next thing, we want to remove float, and to do that there is a pin actually that goes in only one side. So one side of a pin is serrated, another one is kind of beveled, and usually pin is inserted from outside, which means we need to drive it out from this side. And to do that you would need very small punch, or I can use the old pin that I have here. Let's see, if you look closely, you see that this edge, this side actually is serrated and this one is beveled. So I'm going to use a beveled side and just slightly tap it in order to remove this pin. Okay, there it is. And yeah, this pin is something that you also want to change. If you actually look at this one, it has a lot of abuse and your float is not able to easily glide on top of it. That's why you want to replace it, but in the same time maybe you want to keep it, because it's hard to find a punch that fits here, so you can actually use it as an extractor of the old pin. Okay, now at this point our float just goes up, and this one is in really bad shape, so I'll definitely going to replace the float as well. And now there is a float needle beneath, and this one is the older type that is made of steel, and the cross section is square compared to the newer one where cross section is triangle. It's made of brass and then tip is made of rubber. This one is all steel. and we can actually take a closer look at this one, but I already see there is some significant scoring here, and this thing will need to be replaced as well. So if you take a closer look, you can see the scoring ring. So obviously this is original float needle, and it's really good idea to replace it. Okay. Final thing that we have here is an old gasket that we will remove and put new one in. Okay. On this side, I'm just going to remove this and this screw that has a fabric washer. I'll inspect it, and if necessary I'll replace the washer. Okay. And now we can move toward this side where there is a lever for the throttle and choke assembly, and I'm going to remove those two. Okay, so first, in order to remove this one, you want something like this. Okay, spring goes out. Okay, it's easy with a pick. All right. Next thing, I wanna remove this screw for butterfly position. And this is screw plus spring, plus there is a bushing at the top that enables it to slide over the body, so don't lose that sleeve when disassembling it or bushing. Here it is. Okay, just like that. And now we can remove this part as well. Okay, to do that, just two screws that holds it in place. One. The other. Okay, and there is a split washer. Maybe you want to replace these because they are old and don't work anymore. And now with some fiddling, this one should just slide out. Okay, there it is. Okay, so now we can proceed with the removal of this butterfly disc and the shaft. And in order to do that, well, the reason why we want to do that is because there is O-ring on a shaft that we want to replace. And in order to replace that O-ring, you need to remove shaft. and for that reason butterfly needs to go out. And butterfly is held to the shaft with these two small screws inside, and I can see that these were replaced before, because usually on this side of the screw they are kind of mushroom, so they wouldn't go out. Yeah, so either they use thread locker or they just screw them in. Based on the experience with the left one, there was no thread locker and they were easily unscrewed. I would never recommend that, you know, so if you are not going to mushroom them on this side, then just use a thread locker. Okay, so let's proceed with that, and then we can pull the shaft out. It's very important to note how disc is oriented, because it cannot go in any side. There is actually a dot stamped. Not sure if you are able to see. There it is. Okay, so that dot needs to go up and you need to be able to see it. So please take some pictures when disassembling, so later you know how to put it exactly. Before I remove it, I want to inspect how well disc was seating, and the way to do it is either close it and look at the light or put a lamp below. Yeah, this one is not too bad actually. It seats pretty good, so that's nice. Okay. And now we can proceed with these screws removal. Okay. So try to gently unscrew it. If you feel any kind of resistance, that means that that end of the screw is bugged. So you would need to shave it actually with a Dremel tool to be able to remove it. This one goes so easily that obviously screws were not jammed or bugged at the end. Okay. Right. And if they are thread locker, if thread locker was here, you would need to heat it up first before removing those. Okay, now this disc should just slide out. Okay, like that. We are going to clean it. And now we can pull shaft. And here is that O-ring that we want to replace. Okay, that's perfect. We will actually disassemble everything and before putting it in ultrasonic cleaner. Okay, and now the last thing that we are going to work on is to remove choke or enricher, essentially body. To do that, there are 4 screws that holds it in place. These are not even tightened. Sometimes they are very tight, but I guess these ones are not. Okay. Okay. Now there is a gasket below. And sometimes this gasket can be problematic, especially in this area where vacuum actually brings it in, and you want to pay special attention when assembling it so it stays in place. I usually like to use gasket sealer, gasket cinch to hold it in place so it doesn't, so it's not pulled in by vacuum. Okay. There is nothing else to this carb. I can just give it a bit more, brushing and degrease it, and then it will go inside the ultrasonic cleaner. This guy, I want to disassemble it, so I believe there is 11 millimeter wrench goes here. Yeah. and there are two posts here like that determine what's the end of a travel. So it might be tempting actually to pry it against those, but they can easily break, so don't do that. Use actually your hands or pliers, whatever, to hold this guy in place so you can remove this nut. Always good idea is to use closed or boxed end, not the open one, so you don't risk destroying the nut. Okay, so there is a nut and there should be a wave washer beneath. Okay, and now this just slides out. Okay, and finally you can press this thing out. So take a note. There is a dot here, and that dot needs to be oriented to this part of a body when you are putting it back. It's not the same. And on the back side you will see here in a brass actually stamped letter R, which means this is a right hand side carb. Okay, now we'll just press this out, and here is the O-ring that also needs to be replaced to avoid any kind of leak. Okay. Final thing that we will need to remove is basically this nut here from the butterfly shaft. So the same thing as with the previous one, there is a nut and a wave washer, and now these two just slide out. Okay, here's one, and here is the other. Okay, now we are going to proceed with O-rings removal, and to do that needle nose pliers are really handy. So you just grab the O-ring, squish it, and it should just break apart. Next thing that we want to do is remove needle and diaphragm. So needle, this is older style of needle. Clip is a bit different. In a newer one you would actually unscrew it from here and then needle just comes out. This one basically you are rotating 90 degrees, pulling it until it's completely out. There it is. So just looking at this needle, it's in a really good shape actually, but since I already have a new one in place, basically I ordered it, so I'm going to use new needle. Okay, and now how diaphragm is removed, you take a screwdriver and remove these 4 screws. They all have split washers, and if they are completely compressed, it's a good idea to replace them. All 4 out, and now this ring goes out and the diaphragm is free. Does not look that bad, but we will replace it anyway. Okay, time to put these things in an ultrasonic cleaner, and after it's clean we will do assembly. Okay, so now we can proceed with assembling the rest of the carburetor. Here I have a gasket and O-ring set that came as a kit. So this is a big gasket, it's a bowl gasket, and then this one is a choke gasket, and then there are 5 O-rings that I have here. Okay, so what I have is like 2 of them are same size and they are small, and then I have this middle one, then one a bit larger, and then the largest one. And this is how it goes. So idle jet takes small one, like that. Air mixture screw takes another small one. Okay, then choke shaft takes middle one. Then I have butterfly shaft that takes the next one, and finally I have a main jet holder that takes the biggest one. And with that order we are going to put O-rings in. Usually how I like to do it is basically you just rotate, you press it on like this, and then when inserting it I like to wet it just a tiny bit with oil. So with oil your rubber swallows and then it seats better. Okay, next one is shaft. So away from here, there it is. This is choke shaft. Unfortunately this one has really sharp edge and I'm afraid it might actually rip our O-ring. So for that reason I'm going to use a nylon as a protection for the O-ring. So here it is, just a piece of nylon, and that here we can put over it to protect our O-ring. Okay. Just like that. Okay, so now O-ring is in place and we are going to pull nylon out. There it is. And O-ring stays and it's not damaged by these threads. Okay. Next one is idle jet, so it's a small O-ring. And sometimes it can be actually challenging to push these over. Finally, the last one is usually the most difficult one, and I'll see if I can bring it from this side. So there it is. This one is also mounted. Okay. Okay, so now we can proceed with putting the shaft, throttle shaft in. Okay, there it is. In the same time, I'll put this part. And the screws. So you want to position this that that shaft does not rub on it, because it can actually dance quite a bit. Okay, this looks good. I'm just going to tighten it. Perfect. Okay. Now we will insert the disc, and note that hole needs to look up. Okay. So we need to perfectly align disc, and the way to check it is if you put a lamp below, and this looks actually great. Okay. So light, you should not be able to see light from below. Now I'm going to take new screws, put the thread locker, now I want to double check if disc is still properly seated before I tighten it. Looks good to me. And now we are going to tighten it. Okay. That's it. Looks great. Now if we flip it over, we can actually clean excessive thread locker. That's it. Okay. Now we can put these two plates back and a screw. And I also have a new wave washer. And then you drive stop screw until it touches the plate, and then half turn more. You can also put a new spring. Okay, and now we can come back here and do the rest of the things. Okay, so first we can do air mixture screw. Again, just tiny bit of oil. That's it. So you drive it all the way down till it bottoms down, and then one turn out. That's half. That's a full turn, and that should be good enough for engine to start with these carbs, and then we will adjust them later. Okay, now idle jet. Now we are going to put new gasket for the ball. That's it. Okay. Next part is ball needle, just like that, and this is pin for the float. And the new float. Okay, so needle goes from outside of the carb, which is here. So you put it like this, and then you drive your pin, but not all the way to the end, because we need to check if float is properly seating. And the way how to do that is basically you take a carb and then you rotate it 45 degrees, and this seam of a carb needs to be parallel, of the float needs to be parallel to the carb body. Okay. And this one is, so we don't need to adjust anything. This one works perfect. Okay, so in that case we can actually drive this pin all the way in, and to do that we are again going to use our old pin. Okay. That should do it. Great. Now this diffuser goes in. Okay, so it needs to be completely in and protruding You can actually see it from here. There it is. Make sure it goes all the way through and it's protruding, otherwise you can actually jam it when putting the whole needle jet and holder in. Okay. Now we need a needle jet, and this is the one that is stamped 2.68. Okay, that's the correct one. Okay, that one is fully seated. And now holder, so hold it again. Next we are going to put a main jet, and we have correct one here for 1000 cc, and that's with 150 stamp. Perfect. Now we can put the bowel back. Finally we can close it, and now we are going to work on this side. Okay, we previously inserted a needle and placed diaphragm, and now we can actually put everything back together. And here there is again kind of hole where this part of the diaphragm goes inside, so you can see it. So that needs to be aligned. First needle needs to come all the way through. Now carefully align hole with that protruding part of a rubber diaphragm, and finally we are going to place a cover. Just double check. Okay, make sure that diaphragm is not pinched between body and a cover. And now we can put our screws back. Okay. And finally this one, okay, it goes right here. Okay, so with that we are done with restoring these carbs, and they are ready to be installed back on a bike. Thanks for watching.